Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I am so excited for this next guest. I know I say it every time, but I'm very, very, very excited. I have the pleasure of interviewing a good friend at this point, but she was also a client, and she's also someone who is very, very informative and knowledgeable when it comes to financial advice. Her name is Colleen. I'm going to have her introduce herself in a second, but I'm super excited to have her here because when it comes to obviously what we do at Tips with Tony, it requires an investment in yourself, an investment in your future, and even a mindset shift to believe that you're worthy enough of doing that. And then I think where Colleen's going to be able to shed light is kind of the how-to. Maybe you know that you're worthy to spend money on, but maybe you just don't even know where to find the money from, or maybe you're in so much debt that it's hard to justify, or maybe you're actually in a good financial position, but you really wanted to use that extra money to invest in your long-term retirement fund. And you're I don't know if it makes sense to, hire a dietitian or whatever it is. All that to say, it's not just about hiring a dietitian. I think health is wealth. And I do believe that if you are stressing about your finances, then you're stressed out, which can wreak havoc on your health. So regardless of whether you want to listen to this episode because you're hoping to be able to find some money or save some money to be able to invest in working with a dietitian or nutrition coach or a financial advisor, whatever it is, or if you just want some tips on how to be in a better state so you're not stressing all the time about money, this is definitely the podcast for you. So anyways, Colleen, welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just as excited to be here, talk all things money and nutrition and all the things we've been through in the past little over a year, I think. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. All right. First question. It's a 3-part question. I would love for you to share who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
So my name is Colleen Patel, and I am a financial coach or a money coach. I run a group called the Prescription for Financial Health, which is a nod to my pharmacy career. I'm a pharmacist by trade, but my mission is really to bring more financial confidence to women of all kinds. And I like to provide a safe space to talk about money, all things related to money, attacking debt, saving for your future, and spending money on things you love today.
Amazing. And so what made you shift from being a pharmacist to going into something like this?
Mostly as a busy mom, I found that just like everything else in life, every season of life comes with a new opportunity, new challenges. And as I juggled motherhood and my career, I just was looking for new opportunities. And in the last 20 years, I've spent a lot of time on personal finance and realized how much it affects households in general, affects everyone has to deal with money. We know it's not the most important thing in life, but we do have to use it every single day. It affects all of our households. It affects all of our relationships. And as a busy mom, I also see how it affects our children. So I just believe the more women that have more financial confidence and have faith in their decisions with money, the better the world will be. It just ripples out into the world. It affects our businesses. It affects our communities, our children, and our homes, really for everyone.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't agree more. All right. So let's first start talking about, I think, where I don't know what the statistics are, but I know that most people are in debt, and then I also know that there's good debt, quote unquote, and bad debt, and how do you can use debt responsibly. So I would love for you to just talk about how can one attack debt? Because I feel regardless whether it's good or bad, it's just, I feel it's always hanging over your head. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's the feeling that I get. It's I would just wish it would go away. So how does one begin to attack debt?
Yes, for sure. We could talk about attacking debt is probably the number one concern for most clients I speak to, most people I speak to. And there is the whole battle between good debt and bad debt and using debt responsibly. What I like to attack first is usually credit card or consumer debt, because that's something we usually have the most control over. And in the United States, the average is around at least 4 figures of consumer debt and credit card debt. And the part I think is most interesting is that as incomes go up, credit card debt also goes up. So everyone believes as soon as I make a little more money, if I get a little more income, if I just had a little more money coming in, I'd be able to take care of this credit card debt. And what happens is something known as lifestyle creep. You get a little more money, you spend a little more money, and it leads to higher incomes, leading to higher rates of credit card debt, which to me just says it's a behavioral issue. It's more of a behavioral modification than it is an income issue.
100%. And I can totally attest to that. I'm so guilty. I literally have the worst financial behaviors.
And in 2022, it's easy. It's so easy your cards are stored everywhere. All the old habits of freezing your credit card and those kind of tricks are a lot more difficult in 2022 when you've got 12 different ways to pay at almost every juncture.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some behaviors that you think someone could work towards developing to help them maybe get out of maybe not get out of debt, but even just, I think, decreasing it, knowing that they have like some sort of a handle on it?
Yeah. So in general, I have a 5-step framework that I like to put everyone through. And step number 1 is just taking responsibility for your finances. It doesn't involve using a spreadsheet. It doesn't involve looking at anything. It's just the first mindset shift that you're going to take responsibility for your finances. I think it really has to start there before you look at even which debt's best to pay off first or where you should be saving your money. The first step is really just deciding you're going to be responsible for it and take some time to put action into it.
Yeah. How do we find the other 4 steps?
So I deliver a lot. Yeah, I deliver a lot of that in my face.
Half? It's totally fine. I understand. We're trying to, people probably pay you lots of money for your expertise.
Yeah, so I deliver that framework, but the first one's really responsibility. The second one is developing the awareness, knowing, really spending some time to know your money, to know, do you have good debt? Do you have bad debt? How much are you putting towards it, with every paycheck or with every pay? Having a plan, much like nutrition, have a plan, execute your plan. It's never going to go perfect. Life is not perfect. Your plan for this season of life might work splendidly, and then you'll have a change and it doesn't work and you have to reevaluate, readjust, plan again. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that I feel like is very similar to like the work we've done in your program for nutrition for me, comparable to finances for other people.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess what would you say to someone who is trying to save money, but they're also in debt? Like, do you believe that they should be? I've heard 2 schools of thought. I've heard get out of debt first, save your money second. And then I've also heard do it together, because if you waited to save money and pay off your debt after you've paid off your debt, you might never save any money. Which I feel like that is very much true for me. But I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and this has changed dramatically for me over the last 20 years. When I graduated from pharmacy school and then I got married, together we had over $100,000 worth of student loan debt. And we had, it just felt like a giant mountain. We had a brand new life and all this excitement, and then this giant mountain of debt, which is what started me down this pathway of starting to investigate, how am I supposed to get out of this? How are we supposed to handle this responsibly? And it did lead me down several of the famous, and pretty highly known financial gurus would say, get out of debt first. All debt's horrible, but it really came to me over the last 2 years to feel more of a shameful. It carried a lot of shame. It carried a lot of guilt if you spent any money on anything at all. And I really found to get away from the eating rice and beans until you're completely out of debt, because it feels unsustainable. And much like dieting, it feels like when you're so restrictive and then you're restrictive and restrictive and restrictive, and then it blows, right? And you go and spend a whole bunch of money.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I have really found for people that are kind of at the beginning, I have a tool that I like to use, pretty common. It's called the 50-30-20 rule, which to me, 50% spent on your necessities. So your household, your transportation, your clothing, your food, really, 50% going there, 20% going to your savings, which is either savings or paying down debt. and then 30% going to your wants, so that there is always some room for you to be spending so you can enjoy life. And then that's what, in my Facebook group this month, we're doing a focus on spending money on things that you love, because I think that keeps you motivated, that keeps you going. It's really hard to just paying off debt's amazing. And there's definitely getting rid of your credit card debt or high interest debt first is definitely more important. And then you get down to things that are, business loan debt or student loan debt or home, mortgage debt. Most of us have to have those to purchase a home, to start a business, to get a professional degree. So there's different levels to attack, but I find that making sure you're spending, at least 20% on savings / attacking your debt. And there's a lot of nuance to that. But I feel like it's helpful to look at if you're spending more than 50%, say, on just your basic needs, then you're going to realize you have to have an income change or a spending change.
Yeah. Well, and as you were talking about that, like I'm thinking about like certain locations like New York, California, where honestly you can't find, it's very difficult to find even just like a cheap or like an affordable rent, like a rent, like most people's rent payments, I would say probably take over that 50%. And then you have to think about, the car, transportation, travel, gas, electric, like all the amenities, the park, all that stuff. And I would say, I feel like most people that live in like certain states, that's actually really hard probably to do, especially if you're just starting out. Like I remember when I first was my first apartment, and I moved out of like right after college, and I had met with like a financial advisor because I was like concerned that like I didn't know how I was going to do this. It was my first time on my own. They're like, well, your rent is basically like more than half of your paycheck. So there's really not much that you can spend your money on freely. So we advise that maybe instead of getting like manicures every week, you go once a month or something like that. I was like, okay, that sucks. So I was like, or I can get another job. And I like was a babysitter on the side. I was like,
yeah, there's a drastic difference between a high cost of living area and a low cost of living area for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But I love the idea of having like on purpose, anytime you get paid, taking a certain percentage of that to save it, to put it in an account for doing things that you love. So would you agree? Would you say that like something you love would be like investing in your future health, or is that a separate account?
And it can get pretty nuanced down to everyone. When you come up with a spending plan of spending money on your necessities, what you need to take care of your household, your family, and spending money on things that you love. My separate account I like to have is like a preventative health fund. So I have a medical fund for any medical expenses we have that to me are usually, some of them are routine, right? You have a certain amount we need to spend per year on our basic care, but I'm trying to prevent bigger medical expenses down the road by having preventative health care. And that's where things like nutritionist, health coach, gym memberships, personal trainers really fit in for me and feel like, a purposeful and good use of my money because it's going towards something we love and believing and following our values. Like our money is flowing in the direction of our values. Health is one of the big values for our family and healthy living.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have if you don't me ask, like how many separate accounts do you have for like saving for medical, saving for preventative health, saving for fun? Are they like actually different like checking accounts or savings accounts?
I have my own detailed. It really comes down to your personality type. So I've found that more type A people like me probably have more accounts, say, and more ways that they're tracking that spending individually. I don't think that's necessarily realistic for everyone. But having like a certain bucket and I have some people that use a very few and some people that use a lot of clients. And I think that really comes down more to your personality on how you like to split that up, how it makes sense to you. And whether you're using, some people use an app to manage, or some people like me are still good old pen and paper, or maybe an Excel spreadsheet just to ease up on the math, the calculations.
Yeah. Well, I think for accountability purposes, like I've started having excuse me, I just hit the microphone on accident. Sorry for the listeners, that may have been harsh on the ears. I started doing that recently, and it actually really is helpful. And I'm actually not very type A. I have like type A tendencies, but I'm actually probably the only dietitian on the planet that's not type A, like to the T. But then I have this question. So I've been doing that. I've been noticing that it's helpful. It almost makes me feel better that I actually even have an account for like if I'm going to gift somebody something, or if I'm going to a wedding and I have to put money in a card, and it's like, I don't have to stress, because people in New York put like $500 in a freaking envelope, but like it's normal for a couple. It's insane, actually. I think like certain like customs are just stupid.
Weddings are a whole other topic. I was just discussing with friends today.
It's depending on like your age, right? Like I'm 32. So, I mean, the amount of weddings I have I probably, and especially if you're in one or if you have to travel to one, I mean, you need at least 5 to 10 grand just to support your friends. It's insane. Or your family members that are getting married. Anyways, but what I started doing was like knowing that, okay, if I have a wedding, last year or this year, I had like 3 weddings. I have one in November. I have an account where it's that plus like if I know it's someone's birthday and I'm going to want to give them a gift, it's like, it's automatically just like going in there. And now when it's coming up, I'm not stressing about it. It's already there, and I can give from a place of like, I have it. Like I'm excited rather than being like, oh my God, I have to give them this present. And like, I want it to come from a positive place. Anyways, that's been really helpful. And so even this conversation, it's kind of motivating me to like do a little bit more of that and get a little bit more specific on like which account is for what. But then there's the discipline.
Right.
Then there's times where
I find that even at the bare minimum, having an account for your bills, like the things that are coming out every single month that are routine, that you can take a portion of your paycheck, put in there, they'll get paid, auto debited, but you don't have to worry about that. And then having a separate account that you can use just to pay all the incidentals and the day-to-day living. So they're not commingled, makes it easier to make decisions. Like even if you go to get a coffee and you're looking at your account's actually reflecting what you have to spend that month, as opposed to spending and your bills and all of those things. So I do like the separate accounts for that reason.
Yeah. But my next question was going to be like the discipline of like, now maybe your account for spending for fun is low, and you decide, well, I have the money in this account that I'm saving for the car or whatever, or for, the wedding that I'm going or whatever. And it's like, well, I could just put it here and then put it back later. And then maybe you never do that. Like, so do you have any tips?
So my tip, I think
discipline or the habit?
when I was talking about my steps, was talking about principles. So deciding what kind of principle you want to live by. Picking financial principles, whether it's I'll spend less than I make is a financial principle. And then it helps you make your decision down the road. Or I will take money out of my emergency fund for X, Y, and Z. These are the things like my car breaks down,
right.
My dryer or washer breaks and I've got a family of 5, these are the things I will take out of my emergency fund. Making those decisions ahead of time and saying, this is a principle I'm going to follow, then helps you make the decision when the actual decision arises.
Right. And do you believe in like minimums, like having a certain amount in the account and trying to like keep it at least this amount? And if it goes below that it's like you stop spending. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes. And I think that is because it helps with your stress level, right? And we all know the more stress we have in life, a lot of people have financial stress, and anything we can do like that to reduce the stress and make it more manageable. And I just think those things help us all in the long run. A lot of things too, like Amazon accounts, that kind of spending just happens so easily these days. So
easily.
And I find things like having, only purchasing on Sundays. You can put everything in your Amazon cart or put it on a wish list, but not purchasing until Sundays, or setting some kind of principle like that, especially if you're managing a household and you're dealing with, just like everything else in life, if you're just dealing with one person, you can make decisions one way. If you're dealing with 5 or more people, you've got to kind of adjust how you're making these decisions.
Yeah, that's a great tip, by the way. I just like snuck that in there. Like just
or buying gift cards.
I mean, Amazon can really get you.
Yeah,
it can really get you.
I have one client, we've had a lot of Amazon purchases. We're having trouble deciding if the spending was appropriate or not. And we've moved to a certain amount per month goes on a gift card. So we know this much as Amazon purchases are going to be made because it's pretty standard issue per month, but it's keeping it from overflowing every month. And a lot of times you can push a charge if maybe you don't really need it right now, and you can put it in that wish list and buy it later. I also, because I have 3 kids who are all teenagers and all want a lot of things, they all have their own child account, which means they can ask to buy things, but they can't buy them on their own. It just comes to me as a request, and I can approve it or deny it. And we can have conversations about the things they're buying instead of it just being a constant stream of packages at the door. Because I think in 2022, it's just so easy to order, it arrives without much thought. So trying to introduce a pause where you have more thinking about things, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay. So one thing that your Facebook group, it's called like Colleen's prescription for financial health. Like, how would you define financial health? This is a nutrition podcast, a health and wellness podcast. How do you define financial health?
Yeah. So for me, financial health is the state of your money where it's calm and simple and organized. So where you feel like you have a plan so that it's not, you're not up at night or having sleepless nights because of your money issues hanging over you. So I do believe it means you've got to focus on your finances, take that responsibility, even spending just 10 to 15 minutes per week, focusing on your finances can really change your outcomes.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned in the beginning about like coming up with some kind of a plan. How does somebody begin even like creating that plan? Do you find like it is best to work with someone? Because I think like the thing where I think probably financial advisors or coaches maybe get stuck where like they might, I don't know. I just like logically, it's like, I'm going to give you money to help me when I'm having money issues. Right. And you're going to help me so how does one begin, or is it usually recommended that they work with someone because it's usually the faster way to get to where they want to go?
Yeah. So I'll say there's 2 different. So I'm a financial coach, which means I'm helping you more with your day-to-day spending, day-to-day money decisions, thinking about your mindset around money, helping you look at your accounts, look at your interest rates on your different loans or debts that you do have, those kind of things. What I don't do is any tax advising or any financial advising. So like financial advisors usually focused on telling you what kind of investments, I don't have those qualifications to do that or to give tax advice, but I can help you come up with the questions to ask your financial advisor, to ask your tax professional. And then as a coach, it really is just compressing time, helping you with the accountability. A lot of people are in avoidance about their money because it's hard to sit down and look at it. And especially the longer it goes. I think this is your notebook here, right? That says, do it now, sometimes later becomes never.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So, and I think just as that goes for your nutrition and your health, it also goes for your money, because as adults, we're forced to deal with our health. We're forced to deal with our money. They're just things we have to take on as part of life. So the sooner we take responsibility, and I think a coach, like as a financial coach, you have someone who's going to ask you every week, okay, did we look at our money? Did we come up with a plan? Did you try it? How did it work out? Did it work like you expected it to? Was it easier or harder? And having that accountability really makes you take more action than you do without it. Or at least I know that's the case for me. That's the case for me. And anytime I've hired a coach, I hired coaches for a lot of things. I do think they help you compress time, get to results faster, keep the accountability and the motivation. I mean, even when we're working together, just talking together, you are like, oh, I have a call coming up. It motivates you to make better decisions the 2 days before and the 2 days after, right? It's keeps it top of mind, the kind of decisions you want to be making and the kind of person you want to be making when it comes to your health and your wealth. And I do feel like they're intricately linked. My financial advisor and I, we always talk about health is wealth, because he has a lot of people with wealth that haven't taken care of their health, right? And then they're not going to be able to enjoy that.
Right.
And so I feel like that goes both ways, which is also why I take, I invest in my health a good bit.
Yeah, I know. So Colleen, this is a good transition actually, because Colleen had joined the 6 Month to Food Freedom program maybe about a year ago. She's been through a lot. Colleen, I'll let you share your story and everything. Sure. She had the pleasure of working with Mary Rose to start. She got to her 6-month mark and she realized, because of a lot of unfortunate loss she had in her family, and just craziness going on. It was really hard for her to kind of really grasp everything within the 6 months, which also, by the way, it's I would say 40% of our clientele continues after the 6 month mark, mostly more so for just like wanting more accountability. But for some, it's just like 6 months is the minimum, I would say, for people that need to break up with those bad habits and form new ones. But with that said, she actually invested again in another 6 months. And then I decided to take her on as a client just for, change of perspective, maybe new voice. And we worked together for another 6 months. So it was a whole year in the program. And she really, really grasped. She really helped. I mean, it really, really helped her a lot. But Colleen, I'll let you speak to it of how it was for her to be able to invest twice in a nutrition program. It's really great that you did, because I feel like that second half of us working together is where a lot of those things started to finally click and come into place. So how did you feel about everything?
So that's part of mine. Like I've always, since I've started focusing on my money 20 years ago, I always put a little money into this preventative health fund so that I knew I could, it started off maybe by taking extra classes at the gym, or then I had a few injuries that led me to working with some group personal training, which really helped. I wasn't able to get past this plateau of my injury without having that help. Use that. And then unfortunately, yes, had some very difficult life circumstances, standard, busy mom with 3 kids. So I felt limited on time, but also was suffering some injuries and a whole lot of stress. And that was some caregiving stress. And when you're dealing with the healthcare system, I think anyone that's done that knows how much extra it's out of your control, the stress you have when you're dealing with a healthcare system on a regular basis. So I knew that I had an injury. I wasn't going to be able to train my way out. And the best thing I could do was focus on my nutrition. So I started researching, looking for a coach to help with my nutrition. And what I think on your podcast or on, in maybe your Facebook group, I had caught on to a lot of your talk just about emotional eating. And that caught on to me because I was suffering from so much caregiving stress and going through periods of time of being at the hospital and not eating, which actually I wouldn't have thought were as much of a problem, but I think they were a big part of my problem. The not eating, adding to the stress, creating this cycle, as well as then the emotional eating when I was home and trying to handle the sadness that came with, caregiving and losing both of my parents within the past few years. So I feel like the accountability was what I was looking for, but also a different season of life. It was a different season of life for me. In previous seasons of life, I'd use marathons to work out my stress. That was not an option for me the last few years with the, physical ailments I had going on. So nutrition is always something to focus on, but it was definitely a season of life where that's what I needed the most.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that we provided that for you. What's one thing that you're most proud of by doing the program?
That I don't feel stressed about food. Like I've reduced my stress about food so much, which also reduced any of my emotional eating. Today I went to Trader Joe's and my cousin told me that they have these amazing lemon bars in the freezer. And I bought myself a treat. And I was like, oh, look at that. I came home with tons of fruit and bananas and veggies and all of this healthy mixes. And I also bought my treat, and I didn't have the kind of stress I used to have about judging foods as good or bad, or all of those kind of things.
I love it. So great. And so is there one thing that you feel really shifted things for you? Could you pinpoint any time? Was it a conversation you had with either myself or Mary Rose, kind of a realization you had in yourself where you started to notice the old way of how I used to view food and go about food is no longer serving me. And this is the thing that's I just need to just go all in on this process because I have a feeling that this is actually going to be the thing I've been looking for my whole life.
Yeah, I think both working with you and Mary Rose, we're both understanding that There's a different season of life. There's different emotions. Or understanding that I had certain foods that like equate to my childhood and my mom for me, which was a really hard point for me. I had always felt that like I actually have an emotional feeling about those foods because they come from this like happy, healthy home and this kitchen that I loved. And, other programs I'd tried basically were eliminating those forever. And so I definitely appreciated that you guys gave me the ability to feel like that's normal. That's not, so strange that you have an emotional attachment to food. That was definitely one of them. And just overall, I feel like having the accountability of having someone to talk to about how I was feeling about food or how I was feeling about the things that felt out of my control. Like when I was stuck at the hospital and I'm eating a Pop-Tart, like I didn't want to eat a Pop-Tart, but my options were kind of limited. Or when I'd be, in another medical situation where nothing was appealing and it was actually ruining my appetite. So having someone to work through all of those things for, I think was just really helpful as understanding, like I'm just having a human experience. And this was a really difficult part of my human experience.
Right. And there's no reason to feel guilt or shame because whether it's with your finances or with your food, the shame spiral is never really it's not something that you love the ending to. Like it's just never really helpful in the long run. So
it's not motivational and it's not encouraging, and it really isn't how the way life works. It's really not perfect and you can't control it all. You just have to, control what you can in the season of life you're in and get help where you can get help. I find that's been a big, it was very helpful for me to have this particular help over the last year.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So if anyone's been on the fence about applying, what would you say to them? If they were thinking about applying to the 6 months of food freedom program, but they haven't really submitted their application yet, what would you say to them?
Well, food freedom to me is the ultimate goal. I think that's the goal, for it not to be controlling our decisions, not to be controlling, our time spent with our family or in our households. The less that food controls that, the more opportunity you have for other things and exciting things in your life. So I think it's always worth the call, right? It's always worth having the phone call and seeing how it can help and if it helps you in this season of life, if it's what you're looking for. But having that accountability and the encouragement, I think, is a great reason just to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Well, you heard it from Colleen, guys. Go to tipswithtony.com/coaching and apply if you haven't yet. And make sure that you head over to the link in my show notes to join Colleen's Facebook group, Colleen's Prescription for Financial Health. Is there anything you want to share or end with that the listeners may benefit from hearing today?
I do feel like health and wealth, health is wealth, are just, they're combined to me. Taking care of your finances, taking care of your health really helps reduce your stress overall, which we know helps all of us. And spending money on things that you love, that are valuable to you, valuable to your life, is a good use of your money.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how you can be both happy and healthy. One or the other. I love it. Thank you so much for being here, Colleen. Guys, for you listening, make sure you take a screenshot of this episode, share it on your story, and tag me at tips_with_Tony with an I. Make sure you join Colleen's Facebook group if you're not a part of it yet. It's a free group, right?
Yes,
anybody can join it.
Absolutely.
So it's completely free. You'll see me in there. She does she does lives regularly. Lots of prompts, questions. It's a really great conversation. That in itself is probably will provide some accountability for you guys. So make sure you join that. If you're not subscribed to the Tips with Tony podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button. A new episode comes out every Tuesday and Thursday. And when you're subscribed, you don't miss a beat. All right. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.